get started. So this shows, we call this Conversations with a Millionaire, John. And the reason we do, really, although, hey, Janelle, although money is relevant, it's not the real core of the conversation. It's just really a means to an end. But and money only matters when you don't have enough. So the goal is to bring people who've had, success, and in most cases, extreme success, and dig beneath the surface and recognize tips, clues, and situational moments in time where you self-actualized into a version of yourself that led to financial success, but ultimately holistic success as the real conversation. So there's the setup. And just to give a little information about my friend John White, we've been friends for a long time now, and I'm also an advocate for your product and what you do and how you ensure generational transference of wealth, and an advocate for wealth building and security. But above all of that, I admire you as a friend and as a human being. You're spiritually grounded. You've got a great family, happily married, 3 kids, and you also recognize nothing happens accidentally or organically, and it takes work. And I love your transparency about that. You've been heralded and lauded as a top 40 financial advisor in the Atlanta Business Chronicle. And that's a big deal. I don't know how many financial advisors there are in Atlanta, but I would speculate there's a few thousand, kind of like realtors. At some point, everyone's been one for a minute or tried or thought about it, if depending on your background. But so top 40 is a big deal. So I want everyone to know having John today is a big deal. And no pressure, John, but let's go with it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet everybody. I also think, Rick, just what I love about a smaller, more intimate group is it can be a lot of just dialogue and Q&A, and it could even just be dialogue between me and you, Rick. So certain things that or questions you have or things that you may think would be relevant to the group, we can just have a conversation. And the same for everybody else. It's a chance to, I think we have 45 minutes to an hour. So, this will go a lot better the more intentional questions that you can ask. But I'll share a little bit about myself first and kind of tie into a couple of nuggets here. I'm in the Atlanta area, married with 3 kids, I would say, but I grew up in a very small town. I grew up in a community that people didn't really leave the community. People didn't, they all had family members that didn't graduate high school. Most people didn't go to college. Most people stayed there in their community. And so when I came to Atlanta, it was a big adjustment for me because it was it could be intimidating depending on who you are. And so I had to learn a lot along the way. I'm in a financial industry where people love to tell everybody how smart they are. And then yet I'm kind of coming into it where I don't feel like I don't really know anything. And so the number one thing that has helped me in my career more than anything else is understanding that who you surround yourself with is the most important thing. And to go a little bit deeper, I kind of break this down into 3 areas as it relates to mentors. So what I did early on in my career that I still do today, and I sort of joke about it, is how Rick and I know each other. Is I hunt people and I hunt relationships and I pursue relationships. I know that a relationship is more powerful than even knowledge to a degree, because if I have the relationships, I can always get the knowledge. I can always go back to the well of resource. The same is true in our business, and I'm going to talk about mentors, but even our business for I call them center of influences or sphere of influence, as I know often call it in KW, repeat business, repeat value, just go back to the well over and over. And I think, when I think about mentors, that's what relationships are for me. And I want to be that to other people. And so when I think about mentorship, has been the number one thing that's helped me the most. I think about 3 levels of mentorship. And we think about, or at least I used to think about mentorship as like the old wise man, who's giving guidance. But really, it doesn't have to even be someone older than you. But I think about it in 3 different ways. We should have relationships, and I encourage everyone to seek relationships where there's someone that you look up to. And there's someone who you're saying, okay, based on what I know of this person, I want to be like them in one of kind of my 5 key areas of life. And my 5 key areas of life for me would be related to spiritual growth, uh, physical, just pure health, uh, marriage, or being or a spouse or partner, and then being a dad or a mother. That was important to me. So when I'm observing mentors, I kind of look at those areas, and then obviously business success and financial success. And you have different mentors that may serve in different areas of that life. As ultimately, as people you look up to, you say, based on what I know, I want to be like them. And then, so the number one way to do that is to pursue that relationship. And so, to go a little bit deeper there, people say, okay, John, well, how do I get mentors? How do I find them? But once I find them, then how do I get mentors? And everything in life is a value-based life. It's a value-based world we live in. So, when I meet Rick, it's great to have Rick as a client. You all know Rick is a very successful businessman. But I see Rick and I say, okay, I would love to work with him as a client. But before I can get to him as a client, I want to find a way I can add value to him. Because if I can add value to someone, then you have a reason to come back in that meeting, and you have a reason to come back and stay in that relationship. So instead of ever thinking, how can I sell someone a house, or how can I sell someone insurance or investments, I'm just simply looking at how can I add value to them. Or even before I ask that they're a mentor, I try to find out how can I add value to them. And once you become valuable to someone and you become relevant in terms of a time and gaining a relationship. So we can talk more about that later if you want to, but that's the person that we look up to. The next group is our peer group. So who are we surrounding ourselves with that's on the journey that we're on and are going in the same direction that we're going in? For a lot of us, we all have these people where we look around in our peer group and we say, okay, who's headed where I'm headed? And maybe no one in that peer group is headed where I'm headed. This happens when you're 12 years old in middle school. This happens when you're 18. It happens when you're 30, 40, 50, and 60 as well. And it's just as important all the way through. And sometimes the people in our peer group that are not headed where we're headed, it could be family. So this could be kind of a difficult thing for a lot of people, and it is difficult for me. But eventually we get to staying away from relationships that are negative in our life. But I'm really more talking about pursuing new peers, pursuing a peer group where people are headed where we're headed, and not even just headed where we're headed, but are headed there so fast that it makes us uncomfortable that we're going to get left behind. I'm in a couple of groups where I'm in there with 3 or 4 other 5 other people, and it makes me bring my A game, because if not, I know I will get left, and they will not want me in their peer group anymore. Or they'll view me as one of those people that are holding them back, and that scares me, and that makes me work more intentionally and live more intentionally. So, who we look up to as mentors, who's in our peer group. And I've had great groups and great from both, and that's helped me more than anything else. Now, as I've grown a little bit, one thing I've learned is there's a third group, and it's the mentee group. So no matter where we are in life, someone is looking to us in the same fashion. It could be our own children, could be nieces, nephews, could be the community center around the corner where we can go and help young children. It could be someone who's just starting in the real estate business. It could be someone who's looking at the real estate business who isn't in the real estate business today. But there's an opportunity for us to be that light and mentor to someone else. And what I have found is that I grow just as much from mentoring someone as I do seeking a mentor myself. And the reason why is because I'm a person who believes in accountability. And, Rick can hold me accountable because I don't want to look bad in front of Rick and he's my friend. But even more so than that, if someone's looking up to me and I tell them to do something that I'm not doing, then I'm a hypocrite, in my opinion, right? So I'm not going to sit here and smoke a cigarette and tell someone to stop smoking. I'm just going to go smoke by myself, or I'm going to stop smoking if I'm telling them to stop smoking. So I'm just giving examples. But to me, having mentees that look up to me has held me accountable as much as any other group. And when I'm responsible for their development, it forces me to grow. And there is a saying or quote, I'm sure everyone's heard, that the teacher is the true student. And when we're in a position to teach, and I know this is very much a KW's culture, but we're in position to give to others, it actually develops us more than probably anything else that we can do. And so as you think about your business, or you think about your family or personal life, if I could say one thing that has helped me more than anything else, it would be the pursuit of relationships and mentor, peer group, and mentee. And how does that impact wealth? Because they bring to light things that we should cut out of our life, and they bring clear the vision that we have, or that they help us create a vision. And so that kind of flows into the next phase. Wealth comes to us as we're prepared to manage the wealth, but also because of the value that we're creating in the world, and also because of just situations and clarity that we have. And so for me, I think by being around those mentors, all of a sudden we start to see things are possible that we didn't realize. All of a sudden we have peer groups who are accomplishing things that we think, wow, I'm sure someone has looked at me and they thought, John's not that impressive. If he can do it, I can do it too. And I hope that's the case, because that's the truth. And so having peer groups for me, there's certainly people who have accomplished great things, and I thought, if they can do it, I can do it, because they aren't that impressive. And they are, but I think it kind of opens our mind to the world and what all is out there. And I think that's the first step of anything that we do, whether it's accomplishment or wealth building or even growing as a leader.
That's brilliant. Can I recap a little bit of what you did?
Yeah.
One, that's an awesome way to look at life. I think 3 groups that have impact: peer groups, mentees, and as well as mentors, straight up mentors. And I do agree with you. I think the greatest gift is to enhance the life of someone else. And there's an element, the law of reciprocity and contribution will always favor when you come from contribution. And it can be an agent, to your point, in the office, a young agent that you help nurture who's kind of lost in the woods. It can also be your clients in a consulting role and just being a good listener and a supporter. It's not always about having the answer. It's being available to support them. And I also love that you mentioned that, the teacher's really the student. And I'll take it one step further and say that my definition of integrity is when your inside voice aligns with your outside voice. So when you think a thought or feel something and you take and you espouse to the world, this is how I see it. And when you don't execute in alignment, it erodes your energy and degrades your capacity to feel holistically healthy. But when those are aligned, you tend to, it's like life giving and life and energy giving. And so the beautiful part about teaching is your subconscious brain's listening, and there's a higher likelihood that you actually behave in a way that you espouse to someone that you care about and want to uplift. And so there's that reciprocity piece that's genius. Backing up the tape a little bit. So you shared not long ago in front of a group some stories about, I doubt anyone would know this, but you had an aspiring future in baseball at one point, and you may have been headed this way anyway. And I remember one key story you talked about, making it all the way to the minor leagues. I mean, you were slated for, the next up to the bigs. And you mentioned feeling a part of being there in the experience. Can you share that story with that young Dominican pitcher? I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah. So I remember, small town, small college, not a lot of belief injected in me. So, most people, it was more of, you can't do that. You don't want to go to school there. You're not good enough to play there. But I end up having an opportunity to play in the San Francisco Giants minor league system or team. And so I get there, and for me, it was as if that was the big leagues, but it wasn't. It's just kind of the first step. And so there was a situation one day, and I only played 1 year, and I can kind of give you a whole story there. But one day, I'm getting ready to play, and we kind of hear rumblings in the dugout. And so when you would hear rumblings, sometimes, and normally that's someone talking about another player. And so the rumblings that day was about the pitcher for the Texas Rangers team, who's going to be pitching against us. And he was the #1 prospect of the Texas Rangers. and he was a big guy. So now that I'm back in, I think in Georgia around a bunch of football fans, I mean, he looked like a defensive end that played for Georgia, or I'm a Clemson fan, so one of these that you'll see at Clemson. He's just huge, and he was throwing the ball so much harder than I had ever seen in my life. And so that was about 97, 98 miles an hour. And so I'm sitting in the dugout thinking to myself, I'm thinking a couple of things. I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Was number one. And my second thought is, I'm glad that my mom and my girlfriend are not here to watch what's about to happen, because I don't stand a chance against this guy. And while I'm thinking this in my head, and I would never verbalize this, but that's kind of everything we do is mental in the first place, and mindset. And so I hear a teammate of mine who was definitely no better than me. He dropped a couple 4-letter words, but he said, I'm about to rip his, and then he just lets it flow. And I overhear him, and in my mind, I'm thinking, you've lost your mind. You've lost your mind. You have no chance. I don't have a chance, and you don't have a chance. And so I don't know if anyone on here even watches baseball, probably not. But there's the thing in baseball, when you go bat, you get 3 chances to hit the ball. So I go up there and I swing 3 times, and every single time I swing, the catcher's like already caught it. And if you know anything about baseball, after you swing 3 times, they tell you to go sit down. And that's what happened to me. So I strike out against this pitcher. Well, the other gentleman, he goes up there and he bats after me, and guess what happens? He ends up getting a hit, and he's no better than I am, but he got a hit. And so as my baseball time was over and I was reflecting, I'm getting ready to begin my professional business career. It really hit me that, you know what, I didn't stand a chance against that guy, not because I wasn't good enough. I didn't stand a chance because I didn't believe that I belonged in that setting. I didn't believe that I had a chance, right? And the person beside me, who's no better than me, they ended up getting a hit. And what gave them an advantage over me is that they had a belief that they deserved to get a hit. They had a belief that they belonged in that opportunity. And so when I reflected on my baseball career, it kind of hit me. The reason why I probably didn't go any further than I did, one of the big reasons is I never really believed that I deserved to be there because of kind of where I had come from up to that point. And so I told myself at 24 years old professionally that I moved to Atlanta, and Atlanta's this big city. And, the way I visualized that picture, like that was the city of Atlanta when I moved here. And I just told myself that will never happen to me again. I will never not be successful because of my lack of belief. Because what I realized is I did belong in that setting, right? I was in the game. I was in the uniform. I was in Arizona. I was the one facing that pitcher. And so I had every right to believe that I deserved to be there because I was there, in my mind, like, damn it, I was there. So, when I meet someone like Rick several years ago, or I'm speaking to a group of people, or I go meet in my world, it can be intimidating by how much money some people make. Very similar to real estate, it could be intimidating because you show up to a $200,000 listing for the first time, or $400,000 listing for the first time, or an $800,000 listing for the first time, or a $3 million listing for the first time. And you walk up and you're thinking, what in the hell have I got myself into, right? And thank God no one's going to see how this meeting is about to go, because I might blow it. Well, the reality is you all deserve to be in that meeting. And why do you deserve to be in that meeting? You deserve to be in that meeting because you're the one that's there, and you booked the meeting, you scheduled it. You're on the team that scheduled it. You're at that house, you're in that home, and you deserve to be there. And so that was a big takeaway for me from my baseball career. So now I'm still in situations that I'm uncomfortable, and I'm in situations that make me nervous. But very quickly, I've sort of ingrained in my mindset, I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and I'm right where I deserve to be, and I can prove it to you because that's where I'm standing. And that's true for everybody. And sometimes I do a lot of work in our organization around women's leadership, and I'm in a male-dominated industry. Our firm is growing in diversity more than any firm in Atlanta, but it might be, just for lack of any other way to describe it. You may be in a room and you're the only person that looks like you, and you question, do I belong here? And the reality is you absolutely belong here. And I just want to inject that belief into everybody that I can, because it's critical, and yet everyone deserves it.
Well, and early in your career, John, and that story just resonates, and it's so cool. that you came to that self-actualization, because it's not uncommon that people self-defeat long before they're defeated. And the self-defeat part is when you don't believe you belong and you don't come in with an air of confidence and perspective that even if I don't win it, I was supposed to be here and I'm giving it my best shot. And you eliminate some of that self-doubt just to stay in the conversation long enough to find yourself, maybe it's even luck the first couple of times, but then you start to build a case for your potential and a case for your, the possibility that hey, maybe not only am I supposed to be here, I'm an asset and an advocate for them unlike any other. And that's a big part of the mental shift. And you said something, the very first thing you said is, if I have the relationship, and you didn't say I'll win, but that's what I heard. And it starts, with contribution. You added that later. You can always gain knowledge. And so it's part of this is the riddle of figuring out, if you've got a relationship, you just need just enough skill to get the job done and to grow through the experience. And, but mindset's a big part of that. So early on, let's talk about mindset. And when you got into, so 24 years old, did you go straight to the financial industry?
I sort of. I mean, the financial industry encompasses really kind of three categories. There's banking, there's investment management, and there lending even, and then there's insurance. And so I started solely in the life insurance space for the first 2 years before joining and being a part of Northwestern Mutual. So yes, I had my insurance license at 24 and then investment license at 26.
So, you look young for your age now. I can only imagine at 24. What were your early challenges, and how did you adapt and overcome?
Yeah, at 24, my hair is a little bit longer and I wore glasses and all.
So you just look smarter.
I look smarter and older. Now I'm, you back to self-injected belief in your potential. Now I have LASIK and I don't even care anymore. Early on, I think a lot of it is tricking yourself in that, just knowing that if you're in that situation, you deserve to be there, number one, but also just recognizing everything in my belief is people first. And so whatever you don't know, if you understand that I'm about people first and serving hearts and getting to know people genuinely, you'll always have a chance in a meeting. And I don't like the word sales. I don't like the word selling insurance, selling investments, selling real estate, because I think it's so much more than that. But a lot of times there's just a lack of a better word. So if you're selling anything, it's about serving people's hearts first. And selling is influence as well, and influence is selling. And so it's serving people's heart first. And if you understand that, you really have an opportunity to navigate meetings and conversations that you really have no business being a part of, but you can survive it. And then all of a sudden you can grow and you can continue to learn. So for me, I learned rapidly because I think I was able to hang in meetings I probably had no business being a part of. And I pursued mentors. And so that energy and the confidence that mentors, can inject in you as well, I think is critical. And then next thing you know, you begin to believe what everyone's telling you should believe, which is, I can sell this property, or I can work with this level of a client.
Right. And I know you to be fairly social, but not overtly. Like you're not the disc profile, high D's are like insane drivers, high I's, like I got to be in the middle of the party. I've got to, I'm the spark. And am I correct in assessing that you fall somewhere mid-level, or I know you're driven, but socially?
Yeah. Yeah. My wife is pretty introverted. I joke she's rubbed off on me as we've been married for 13 years now. Early on, I was probably way more social, and you had to be. I enjoy people. I love people. I love being around people. But I've learned that my tank goes to empty faster than my friends who just have to be in conversation all the time.
Right.
So I think there's two parts. One is maybe I'm a little more introverted than I realize, not because I'm uncomfortable talking with people, just that my gas tank runs out. The other is I really just know that you can't really learn by talking. And so I am, I think, extremely good, almost to a point that I could come across boring, but just listening, just listen and listen and listen. And one thing is, if you don't know what you're doing, no one knows you don't know what you're doing if you're not talking. And, I think there's a saying that as long as you keep your mouth shut, you can't prove to people what you don't know. And so I'm very attentive in a room. I observe people. I listen to conversations. A mentor told me once, the person who asks the questions is in control of the conversation. We think the person doing the talking is in control of the conversation, but really the person who asks the questions controls the conversation. And so I think I attempt to be a good question asker and a really good listener.
Well,
And then
you are.
just observing people and kind of figuring out, okay, what angle do I want to take, and who do I want to get to know of the people that I'm around.
Yeah. Well, I had a friend once tell me, John, if you want to be cool, spell it KOOL, a keen observer of life. That's real coolness. You should, yeah, look at that. He's writing it down, people. I got one. I got one. But you know what's funny is I've sort of misinterpreted you being slightly. Look, and I've never struggled in conversation with you, so this is not the point. But I find that you're a really good listener, and if based on what you just told me, which is somewhat new information because I didn't know you at 20. How did you arrive at that realization and the concept of being a better listener? Was that a mentor moment, or was that just self-actualization?
Yeah, I think it's probably from being intimidated, quite frankly, going back to being 24. I mean, I'm the person who, well, if we're going to have a barbecue, the only thing better than having 3 people is to have 8 people. So I am a person who, let's invite more people. But I think early in my 20s, Atlanta and the amount of money around here was just so intimidating to me that it kind of forced me to be a great listener. And then I saw how being a great listener could be, I think it sounds bad, but used to my advantage. Being a great listener is going to put me in a position of strength, actually not weakness. And I think that probably started, Rick, by just being young and being intimidated. And, know if I'm going to say something, I need to be very calculated so they don't know that don't really know what I'm doing. And trying to stay in the conversations that way. And that also taught me to ask questions. And I tell anyone who's shy or introverted, you really don't have to talk. You don't want to be rude. And you really don't have to talk. You just have to ask a really good question. Then the other person can do all the talking.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And you said something interesting too, John. You said, I might be perceived a little boring because I listen, but the truth is no one ever finds themselves boring. So if you're like, that's your own self-talk, they're actually probably loving the conversation because they feel they're contributing and adding value. And I also found this true early in my real estate career is if I ask great questions, and this is straight to your point, I let them give me the ailment that I can then prescribe a solution to. If I found myself trying to figure out their ailment before they self-discovered it, I often missed the target and would undermine my own capacity. Assumptions are dangerous when it comes to a business consultation or a sales opportunity, as you said.
Yeah. I do a fair amount of training in my industry. The same absolutely applies to real estate. You're not in the real estate sales business, and I'm not in the financial advisor sales business. You're in the problem solving business. And so when you're meeting people, they may think that you're there to sell their house. What you're really there to do is figure out their pain point and solve that problem. And when you approach it from a problem solving standpoint, a lot of times you will find problems that you didn't know was really their problem. And it could be something totally not related to real estate or finance, but back to adding value, with learning, asking someone, what's your biggest challenge today? Personally, what's your biggest challenge today? Maybe with this neighborhood or this house or the next, wherever you're going or your job. And then just listen to what people's answers are and then zero in on that conversation. They'll walk away thinking, I have no idea if you've ever sold a house in your life, but I really, really like you, Linda. Can you sell this house for me? That'll be their approach because you've connected with their heart and you connected with what's important to them. So I'm also having the approach of I'm in the people and problem solving business, not the real estate business. And I think that catapults everything as a consultant and influencer.
Yeah. And it's common to want to impress people with your knowledge and not, you want to look good. So you tend to espouse the things that come natural or organic. And I think you just miss the mark more often than not when you don't take the time to really dig deep. And here's another piece of advice, go 3 deep. When somebody tells you like, hey, what's bothering you today? And they say, well, this, and whatever this is, well, I want to move because of this. And you say, well, why is the next best question is, why is that important to you? And then the question behind that might be, and how might it affect you and your family if we're able to solve that riddle? And then what path do you think we should, would you prefer? And then ultimately they'll give you a layup. It's like, you can shoot a 3-point shot from 100 yards out, or they can hand you the ball and give you a step stool to climb up and drop it in. And that's really what great questioning does for you. So thanks for taking us there.
Yeah, yeah. I refer to it as they give you the cheat sheet. Like they tell you all the answers on the test. They tell you how to close them. They tell you what's important to them, versus the just traditional salesperson comes in and they're just talking. And, they might be talking about the wrong subject and people begin, they're not listening. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but it just made me think about it earlier. I have a close relationship with a person in KW in Austin, Diana Kokoska. And she told me one time, John, all people want is they want to look good and be right. And if you think about our society today, and you think about social media, and you think about everything going on, for the most part, that's all anybody talks about is, let me tell you how right I am and how good I look. And if we can really kind of challenge, I think, ourselves on, are we being that person? Are we really speaking from, I just want to look good and be right? Or are we really, asking questions to be a listener and to learn? And sometimes in selling a house, helping the other person think, yes, the right thing for me to do is to pick me. Then we can help close the business. But I'll never forget that. People want to look good and be right. And
Yeah,
and
that's
we do a
cool.
self-assessment of ourselves too.
Well, and think about it this, what's the flip side of that coin, John? How can I help you look good and be right? And you
Yeah,
pull that off, dude, you've got a friend for life. Am I right?
friend, client, yeah, referral source.
All of the above, and the relationships, that bar none comes first. So let's back up one more step then. So in the very beginning, you look young, you are young, you adopt a skill of listening more than talking. And even if the source of motivation is almost irrelevant. You were motivated not to look bad or to not make mistakes. And lo and behold, you figured out that strategy pays dividends even when you do know the answer. And underneath all that is that no one denies their own truth. Have you heard that? It's straight out of Fierce Conversations. If someone espouses or voices their truth, you can reinforce that with a solution. If you tell them that's their truth, there's a high likelihood, if it's sensitive, that they'll defend and deflect. And that's a position of lesser power and lesser influence. And so, brilliant point on your part to take us there. Early on, how did you build your network? Because clearly, and by the way, we're going to get to the part where we talk a little bit about your product and what you do and how it impacts people, because I think that's a great teachable conversation as well. But the people puzzle, where did you go? What did you do?
So I after high school, I did go to college. I majored in being a school teacher though, so it wasn't really a whole lot of my degree that really applied to my industry. I don't have a business degree. I don't have a finance degree. It kind of hit me later. I'm teaching adults today, not sixth graders. But my point there is, nothing from school taught me anything for today, and I hated to read. And I never read books in school. I had to do a book report one time in fifth grade. I picked the book Hook because I knew that there was a movie, and I watched the movie, and they wrote a book report. So that's kind of where my reading was at the time I was 23. But I realized that knowledge, relationships and knowledge together was the secret sauce. And so I became an avid reader in my 20s. And so I read every book I could find about relationship building, connecting people, sales, influence, marketing. And I read, I had probably 10 books a year for about 8 or 9 years. And I felt like, back to baseball for a moment, there was another moment where, when you're playing a professional sport, it's just a level of competition. It's like someone's going to go home and someone's going to get released and someone's not going to get paid and someone's going to win. And so it kind of really helped me understand what competition really was. And so I began to view that I was going to have moments of opportunity later in life. I had no idea what they were, but I knew that they would come, and I was going to have to compete. And my ability to compete in those moments was going to be based on my preparedness for those moments. And so I just began to read and study and listen to everything I could that could prepare me to win later on in life in my industry. And so I read everything I could, Rick. And so along with reading and studying, with that long-term view in mind, then I didn't know anyone in Atlanta. So for me, I did networking event after networking event after networking event after networking event, and I just met probably thousands plus people, and most of them I couldn't tell you their names today. But out of that large group, maybe there were 5 or 6 great relationships. And then one of those 5 or 6 great relationships originally is Reed Casey, who is a Keller Williams agent up in the Alpharetta Milton area. I met him at a Johns Creek Chamber of Commerce meeting in 2009. And so part of that is I don't recommend people go to networking event after networking event if they don't have to. But the point there is I was doing what I had to do. Whatever it took is what I was going to do. And, you know, if someone else has another angle or a different approach, then you do it. But I know, being a leader, everyone's really kind of making their own excuse for why they're not accomplishing what they want to accomplish. And what you see from people who have accomplished what many desire to accomplish, there was a level of, with integrity, I will do whatever it takes. And that would be my example of whatever it takes. Is I went to networking events every night for probably 3 years, it seemed like. And then no, but once I had that little pocket of relationships, now I can meet 2 or 3 people through those relationships, and 2 or 3 people through those relationships, and 2 or 3 people through those relationships. And I didn't have to go to networking events anymore. And you couldn't pay me to go to a networking event today. $100,000 cash, I might attend one event, but outside of that, I'm not going because I'm like burned out by it. But I don't have to do it anymore, and I don't have to do it because I invested that time early on in whatever it took. And so that may be calling a list of expireds for realtors, that may be for sale by owners, that may be knocking on doors. But everyone who has really made it in a startup business, they have a story like that.
Yep. Well, you earn the right to choose what you want to do. And when you know, if you're committed to success and it's non-negotiable and it's like, there's just no option other than, you're in the greatest position to become comfortable being uncomfortable long enough to do the things you have to do to earn the right. And so to your point, you earn the right with networking, you know, by going to networking events. I will say this, you're part of a networking group, and that's different than a networking event. One is a walk into a room, 50 people, Chamber of Commerce, whatever, and you just start passing cards and it's awkward and weird. But I think there's power with civic, social, even, you know, I don't think church is the place to go to network, but it's people that have like kind interest and care about something important. And so GoBundance is one of those. And for me, I'm a part of that group, but there's also BNI, Business Network International. I don't know if you ever did any of those, but it's a more intimate relational experience where you're adding value and you're contributing to building something. It's not like a drive-by, it's a stop and stay.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that I learned through that whole process, and that I think I did well, is if I met, I can see Jack. So Jack, if I met you at an event, I wouldn't look at Jack as like, okay, Jack is a next client for me. I got to figure out how to get him as a client. I looked at Jack as whoever Jack's connected to is a gateway of opportunity to more relationships. So, you know, whether if you're a realtor and you were meeting me, you know, yeah, it'd be great if you sell my house. That'd be awesome. You know, if you help me buy another house. But what you really want to do is you want to dominate my entire neighborhood. So I would, you know, you look at me as like, okay, if I can get to know John, I get to know his peer group, I get to know his mentors, I can pursue his mentees, I can pursue his neighborhood. There's just there's so much more value behind one person or the opportunity for one transaction. And then yet most people approach each person, especially in a networking setting, as like, how do I get a transaction with this individual? Like, I'm looking for leads. I didn't approach it as looking for leads. I approached it as I'm looking for centers of influence that I could develop relationships with that could help me in the future with repeat business.
Yep, brilliant. And here's an easy script that, you know, I used in the past and it works, you know, but you have to, step one is to create a credible relationship of trust and likability. And then once you do, the simple ask is, who do you know that I should know that's a lot like you? Because like kind tend to attract. And I really appreciate our relationship. And not who do you know that I can sell something to? It's just who do you know that I should know? And then start to proactively, do the concentric circles, because good people who respect and appreciate you do want to add value to your life because they're reciprocating.
Yeah, I would say to even go a step deeper, the more specific you can be when you ask. We think we're narrowing a scope, so all of a sudden we're going to miss all the people outside of that narrow lane. But really, what we're doing is we're helping someone think. So if I were talking to Rick, and I say, okay, Rick, who should I meet? And Rick's going, maybe I don't know. Let me think about it. Versus, Rick, you're in Midtown. Do you know anyone at Morehouse? Do you know anyone at PwC? Do you know anyone in the Metro Atlanta Chamber? I'm looking to meet a commercial real estate developer. Who's the best commercial real estate developer you know? So I'm getting really narrow.
Yeah.
Do you know in your office, is there a single mom who's just crushing it? So you might sound like a single mom, I got even more narrow. Well, what about the one that's not a single mom crushing it? Like, well, we'll get to her too, but I'm trying to help them think, anyone in the last 3 years that joined the company who's just thriving, who you think is the next you. I'm being more narrow. So that helps people think. A lot of times we ask for names and we make it too hard for them. I'm in an industry where no one wants to talk about what I do, so it's a little bit harder than real estate. I can't say, hey, who do you know that doesn't have enough life insurance? Who do you know that looks like they have a lot of money, but they're really broke and need some help? Like no one talks about this stuff. And so we have to be more narrow and more skill in how we ask. So to say, who do you know who just got into the real estate business, but is absolutely crushing it, who's going to be rookie of the year? That's a little bit easier person. I'm helping them think of somebody.
Exactly right. That's awesome. So let's take a minute, since you the great setup of no one wants to talk about what I do, or at least I think I heard that.
Well, I joke with people. I'm like, you go to cocktail parties at Christmas. Everybody likes to talk about the sexy stuff, like real estate. No one talks about, really, I bought my suit on credit card because I don't have any money. Like no one's saying those things, right? Everybody wants to look good on the outside. And a lot of what I'm uncovering a lot of times is people maybe aren't quite where they want to be, and my job is to help them get there. And then yet no one's going to be open about they're not where they want to be necessarily.
So let's have some fun with it. So you're speaking to a 30-year-old you, just getting your feet planted, just getting off the ground. What would you advise them in terms of wealth building, preservation, the insurance game? Give us a little background. You start wherever you feel the appropriate start, but I'd love to engage at that level.
Yeah. The best thing that I ever did, or my wife and I ever did in our 20s related to wealth building, is a super sophisticated system. We had an Excel spreadsheet and we put it on our refrigerator. And every time we spent money, we had to write it down. So there was a category for groceries, category for car, category for dog. We had to go write it down. And so when you come in and you've been at the Mexican restaurant, which we love, we're probably going there tonight. And this is kind of where this is ingrained in us now. I go in the Mexican restaurant, almost everyone at the table tonight, and this is like a retail Mexican restaurant that's in a public shopping center. This isn't the Midtown Mexican restaurant where it's even more expensive. But people are going to have you got your chips and salsa, right, which normally they give you for free. But then you order a little bit of guac, and even better, we get a little bit of cheese dip. So that's already $6 in just an appetizer. Well, we're here. It's Friday. I don't know if I want a Corona because it's been a long week. So I'm gonna get a margarita. And hell, let's get the big one because I don't only have to drive across the street. And it's been a long week. My kids are here and they're driving me crazy. So let's get the margarita. But I don't want to get hammered when I'm here with my kids. So I'll just drink 2 of them. And so we walk out and maybe we still feel like, which we probably shouldn't drive, but maybe we can. And so next thing you know, I order a $15 steak fajita. And my wife gets something. Our bill should be about $35, but it ends up being $150 at this retail Mexican restaurant by the Publix at my house. And, we all do this. And I appreciate, Linda, you shaking your head because we all do it. And I'm walking around at our, and everyone's got this. Everyone's got it. But when you have that paper up and you come in and you write down, Mexican 150. Then you go, what the hell? I don't even have a good buzz. I'm still, I kind of feel not real good from all the food I ate. Did we really need to get the cheese? My fajitas, but I couldn't even finish them. So even today we usually get no cheese, no guac, and drink water, and our bill's $41. But you just by writing these things down, it brings to light, not that we can't have a good time, and not that, and I love those margaritas, but it begins to bring into your conscious, is it worth it right now? Do I really want it that bad, or would I rather keep my $100 so I can do something tomorrow, or buy shoes for my kids, or whatever else it may be? So most people in America, and please don't take this as like controversial at all, but there's a lot about minimum wage, and there's a lot about incomes not keeping up with inflation, and there, a lot of those challenges and issues are true. They're absolutely things that we need to do. But from my perspective, America has a spending problem. Whether that's government level, both parties, or that's at the individual level. We want to look good and be right. We want new shoes. We want another Louis Vuitton, even though we probably shouldn't have bought the first Louis Vuitton. We got the car that, goes just as good as the one that costs $30,000 less, but we wanted to look good in our car. And so for us, it just brought to light that when we spend money, it began to bring a consciousness of, is it worth it? And the answer can be absolutely be yes. And we should live for the moment, and we should have nice things, and we work hard, and then yet, but what we realize is we're spending a lot of money that's not worth it. A lot of money that's not worth it. So at the time when we started that, my wife was a public school, high school public school teacher. She made $42,000 that year, I think. I started my career, and that year my W-2 was $26,000. And we have no upside for bonus. So it's not like in your business where, hey, I can go sell another house and make a couple $1,000s. We started saving $500 a month by just being conscious of what we were spending on the exact same incomes. And we still had a nice townhouse that we still, our vehicles, they ran, they did well, but all of a sudden just the consciousness of spending. And it began to build a muscle that even today, as I spend a little more freely, it just creates before I give them my card, I think about, is this worth the money I'm about to spend? And I think that's the best thing that anyone could ever teach themselves.
Yeah. Well, the problem with credit cards is it doesn't depict or display the supply side. All it is a vehicle for a momentary experience. And it's risky because it's so easy to slap it down. Now you don't even have to stick it in the machine. You just tap it or wave it. They catch you coming in the gate.
Yeah, for sure. And so, in a big picture goal, we all have situations where we need to use our credit card, and we might have to pay it off, over several months because, we had an emergency and we didn't have the reserve funds, and that's okay. And like life brings storms, life is a storm in a lot of ways. But so another mentor told me one time, he said, John, you used to think life was smooth water that occasionally we ran into a storm. And then I realized that life was a storm, and then occasionally there was smooth water. And so I think the point that he brought to me in that is, when there is smoothness in life, like, to be grateful, because we know that another storm is coming. And COVID was one of the biggest storms, or 2008 market crash was a huge storm, right? So it's a lot of what we're doing when the waters are calm or we're okay that's preparing us for that storm. But there are times where we had to use a credit card and we have to pay the minimum for a little while, and that's okay because we have to get through the storm. But what I would try to teach everyone is, if we can be conscious about our spending, it gives us our best chance to think about is it worth it? And then we can begin to save money, and then you save money, then you become an investor, and then investing is what leads to wealth building.
Right. And the greatest thing I've found too, in addition to, so one is defense, and that's the budget side of what you're sharing. And the other half of it is forced savings, or an investment that happens subconsciously, where you're not consciously writing a check for an investment. It's automated. I mean, how do you, part of the product I have with John, so you guys know, is a cash value life insurance policy that virtually guarantees a financial legacy for my family. And it guarantees if an early demise on my part happens, the bills are covered, my wife and kids are cared for. And so that gives me peace of mind. But there's also an element of forced savings when I fund it every month. I write a check and it's automatically taken from my account. I just woke up a year later and I'm like, holy cow, I didn't even realize it just happened. And if you'd left it to my device to actually stop 30 days at a time and consciously decide how much I would put into that account, the odds are I'd miss a few months and maybe write a smaller check because it didn't just happen. What's your thought on that in general?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of back to a system. What I was describing earlier was a system. And the language that I learned from KW that I apply into my own business is, systems is, systems run businesses, right? And then people run systems, I think is how I heard it, but systems are critical in business for scaling business. It's the same when it comes to our money. We will not have any money if we don't have a system for our money. And so what I'm describing for writing things down, not the app, because the app, there's no emotion. The app is like a credit card, literally a pencil, $150 on margaritas and going like this. Like that's part of the emotion behind it. And money is emotional. And so we have to understand that. So, but that's the system. And then we have saving systems. And the best saving system you can have is taking money out of your account and putting it in it somewhere else on an automated basis. And that could be $100. And that's kind of what we did when I said we started saving $500 a month, is we started tracking our spending, but then we had $100 a month go from checking to savings. Well, then all of a sudden we're spending a little bit less. There's a little extra money. So now we bump it up from 100 to 200, and 200 to 300, 300 to 400. And it's just going automatically into savings. And I ended up getting up to be about $1,500 within 2 years on not much more income. And so all of that is a system. And what Rick described was an automated system. And I think if we understand that we're emotional human beings and we're wired that way, likely on purpose, then we need to remove emotion when it comes to our money. And that's partly what we're talking about here, is how can we move and automate emotion from our money.
How would you recommend someone find an advocate for how to do that?
Well, I mean, a person like myself or our team or a financial advisor can certainly help, but a lot of little things that you can do on your own. Back to, we made a sheet and we put it on our refrigerator. And then when you have your bank account and your business account, you should have two groups. So you have your business money and you have your personal money, and they should be separate. And that's really difficult right when you start, because you might be saying, John, I don't have any money, right? And I am the same for me. But as soon as you can, separate the two, and then pay, money flows, commissions flow into your business pays yourself. And now you're putting yourself on a salary. And so and then you build your lifestyle, or you try to cater your lifestyle to that salary, which is essentially your budget. And a lot of that can be automated just through the bank account systems, checking and savings accounts. And I would say that's the first step everyone should be doing. And then once you build up that savings, then the question becomes, okay, what do I strategically do with this money? And that's where a mentor can help you, or an advisor can help you. And I think the biggest misunderstanding related to financial advisors is you need to have a lot of money to have a conversation with a financial advisor. And that's simply not true. Everyone deserves to have someone in their corner, helping them kind of think through the first couple steps to build those systems.
Yeah, there's acquisition, there's preservation, but until you develop a plan, the odds are you walk aimlessly, and that's not the way to manage money and build wealth.
That's right.
You have to have a plan for it. So I know you're a family man, just real brief. So a lot of us, it's been a crazy year, and a lot of people are working triple overtime and maybe netting more money than ever, maybe not. But what's your approach to work-life balance?
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's read the book, The One Thing, but I read the book, The One Thing, in 2012 or 13, right when it came out. And I treated it like a Bible, quite frankly. I mean, I have notes in it. I have my original copy. Some people would ask the question, like, do you believe in the one thing? Like, it's not a belief, it's a universal truth. Like, this is how things work. Narrow your focus. And so there's a lot of great material in that book. The gift and the curse of being a business owner is autonomy. We do it because we don't want a boss and we want autonomy. That's also the greatest curse of being a business owner. No one's making you do anything. You can talk yourself into whatever you want. And so you have to really find ways to treat yourself like an employee of your business. And the way to do that is through systems for your money and also your calendar. And so it took me a while, but I finally one day said, you know what, I've driven in traffic, going to a meeting that someone doesn't show up for at 7:30 in the morning for the last time. So I pretty much built the calendar and says, I'm not going to have a meeting before 9 o'clock, and I'm not going to have a meeting after 5 o'clock. And this is when we had our first child too. So, you know, when you have a partner, you know, you realize other people are depending on you to be certain places. So, you know, getting home late, all of a sudden, unexpectedly, that didn't go over really well. And it wasn't because I was working late, it's just because, you know, I was expected to be home at a certain time. So I began to put kind of brackets around my calendar. So 9 in the morning to 5. So 9 to 5. Now, the beauty of being a business owner is what I do within that 9 to 5, I dictate. In the scale of how much money I can make within 9 to 5, I dictate. But my children today are my accountability partners. They know what time I get off work, just as if I was going to work every day with a regular job. And so I think back to the one thing is creating that, you know, quote unquote, me time in the morning, where I'm going to wake up at a certain time, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to have some time to think, I'm going to get mentally ready for my day, and I'm going to see my family in the morning. That was not easy to do early on, but I've kind of built that system into my life. So it looks, as the book would say, very balanced. And really, you're constantly out of balance, because when you're working, you're doing nothing else. When you're with your family, you can't get anything, you know, no business is being done. And so I would say that's helped me more than anything else is that book.
That's awesome. And recognizing there's nothing that's perfect, and being clear in what your goals are, and, you know, with your family, and then counterbalancing when you get out of balance. Because Gary would tell you, to succeed at a high level, it's impossible to be balanced in most cases and succeed at a high level. Sometimes you have to put the pedal to the metal, and when opportunity shows up, you just have to seize it. The catch is, you do it too long, you have the inability to rebalance, and you want to be cognizant of that. And that just requires sincere conversations with the people that matter, to make sure they recognize what you're doing and why, and also what does rebalancing look like in their lives, so that they're willing to sustain that season, waiting on the counterbalancing moment that's fulfilling. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I know it's a struggle. Success has, you know, it's a gift and a curse. And you've enjoyed some extreme success, and there are compromises at times, and that's just part of being, you know, successful, if you will. Anybody have a question for John relating to investments, money, insurance? And he doesn't sell health insurance. It's life insurance and financial products. He also represents investment products at Northwestern Mutual. Anybody have a question?
Or just questions of anything we discuss.
Quick thing. Do you know a girl named Heather Pastrick?
Extremely well.
Yes. Okay. So Heather was my director at Enterprise for like 6-7 years, and she took us to an event, and I think it was like an auditorium, and I think you were speaking at it. Do you remember? That was like 7 years ago.
She just texted me, you're on a Zoom call at this moment with a friend of mine.
That's me. Yay! I was like, hey, you know this guy? He looks familiar. Yeah, but anyway, you said a lot of good stuff today. I like the thing that you said about having a person look at them like a center of influence and all the business behind them. I'm like, oh, I love that. And as long as you keep your mouth shut, you can't prove to people what you don't know. It's like not going to talk at all.
Yeah, that's me. Heather would be an example. So Heather works, she's a manager, as an upper level manager at Enterprise. And so she's now a client, and she lost her husband last year unexpectedly. So I've kind of gone through the whole journey with her, but through Heather, I have several clients at Enterprise. And so, you know, the whole book of relationships is way more financially valuable than just Heather as a client, which is really my point. But you know, the beauty of our business, in your business is the same, is that some of your future best friends you meet in this business, right? And Heather has become a very close friend.
Yeah, she's pretty great. Cool. Very good. Well, thanks for coming. I learned a lot. So glad you're here.
Anybody else have an aha or a thought or a question? I know it's a Friday and we've got a small group, but this will be put on Facebook and in all of our media settings. So awesome. So I'll share a few of my ahas and then we'll call it a beautiful, perfect day, because man, in my book, it was, John. I love and appreciate you more than you know. But having peer groups in 3 key areas, or influencers, mentors, peer groups, and mentee, and the fact that teaching is the path to self-mastery was just a great reminder. Working on listening skills are invaluable, and taking notes. I think it's a way to honor someone. So get permission, say, hey, with your permission, this is important. I'd love to take notes. That was a key script I used in my consulting appointments, but ultimately the pen's mightier than the mind and your memory, and it pays dividends in multiple ways. But again, it honors them. And the fact that, you know, how do you convince yourself you're supposed to be in the room? You know, John, we do the same work for $100,000 sale as you do $100 million sale in real estate. It's the same purchase and sale agreement, the same addendums, the same exhibit. You inspect it, but the difference in what you gain from the income's dramatically different. So how do you build confidence to where, you know, a $2 or $3 million house, you know, going on a listing appointment is no different at a $3 million house than a $300,000 house. And that's practice. And it's also being a great listener, and coming from a problem solving mentality. You know, it's cool too. You reframe. So I used to reframe my job instead of saying realtor, which I thought was kind of, some people know what a realtor is. It's a weird word to me, but if, you know, mine was wealth builder. I help people build wealth through acquisition and the selling of real estate. And when you say wealth builder, everyone knows what that is. And so when you said problem solving, like that's the same concept. Like give them something easy to chew on so they get exactly what you do. I'm a problem solver. And if you share what's going on, I assure you, if I don't know, I know someone who does. And the power of a network, it's not always, if it's to be, it's up to me, but it's not me. It's really we, when you've got a powerful network and team behind you. Look good and be right, man. That's a great reminder. How can we help other people look good and be right more often? You'll never run short on friends.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's a gentleman in the KW office in Roswell. I cannot think of his name. He's a young guy. I met him when he was like 24. He's probably 30 now. Tim Hardiman. Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, he came through the Midtown office too. I know him. Good guy.
I came blazing through with a suit and tie on. Like he's like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make $1 million. And you know, I kind of chuckle because like you sort of remind me of me, but you know, most people can't do that. And I don't tell him that. And I just watched him, you know, and everyone on his team wears a suit and tie, which no one does today. And no one on his team is over 30 years old.
Right.
There's a little bit of a message, I think, to his buyers and sellers that like, hey, we're here to do business. We're here to be serious. And, you know, it's been kind of fun to watch him because he's certainly tricking himself into believing it early. And now there's no doubt he believes, you know, what he's capable of doing.
Yeah. When you suit up and show up, good things happen. So John, I really appreciate again, an incredible guy. How could someone find you or want someone on your team? What's the best way if they were curious about wealth building and through investments and insurance?
I'll just type my email in here. How about that? Is that easy? And then I'm on Facebook. I'm connected to Rick, and I'll put this in here. Instagram. So that's pretty easy. And then me or my team can follow up, and we're here to help anyone. You know, whether no matter the very beginning stages of that budget, or you know, saying, hey, I've sold a couple houses. I need to figure out what to do with this money. Either one. Awesome.
Genuine to the core. Thanks for your time, my friend. Appreciate you guys for joining us today.
Yeah, nice to see everyone.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.